latest development there on Jerusalem, of course, that is Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu also giving his reaction on the recent announcement or pronouncement from Donald Trump as far as the capital of Israel is concerned, that is Jerusalem. That has been a very contentious issue for many years, and him also defying for decades what other presidents have been doing, or maybe the indecisiveness of Jerusalem as well. But today, that is not the train of our focus. We are actually looking at the women in leadership, and we have a raft of issues to discuss. Also remember, today we'll be covering a very, very interesting conversation at the University of Nairobi, the horn of the dilemma that we are in as a country as far as gender parity is concerned. And as I mentioned earlier, that women represent more than 50% of the population worldwide, but contribute only 37% of the global GDP and represent only 39% of the global labor force. Now, closing or even narrowing the global gender gap in work will not only be equitable in the broadest sense, but could have significant economic impact if all countries were to match the progress towards gender parity in the workforce of a country in the region with the most rapid improvement, as the country in the region with the most improvements, I have said, as much as $12 trillion could be added to the annual GDP growth in 2025. So where are we as a country, and what remedial measures should we take as far as, closing that gap and that chasm on gender parity is concerned? Allow me to introduce to you this morning Nyambura Musyimi. She's the chair of Board of Directors KWFT Bank. Also, we do have with us Dorcas Wainiaina. She's the executive director of Institute of Human Resource Management. We have Winnie Mitchell. She's the CEO of Emerson Systems. Also, we have Muthoni, the National Director of Kenya National Chambers of Commerce and Industry, also founder of St. Petrock Primary School. We have Catherine Musakali. She's the chair and founder, Women on Board Network, Women on Boards Network. Also, we have Banu Khan, the chairperson of Women's Economic Empowerment Network. A very good morning to you, ladies.
Good morning.
All right, today is a big day, especially also as far as the Nation Media Leadership Forum is concerned. We'll be having this discussion in the evening at the University of Nairobi, also being moderated by Linus Kaikai. But this is a precursor to that particular, of course, discussion at the University of Nairobi. As women, are we on the horn of dilemma as a country? Reading from what we have just discovered and trying to close this gap, given the figures that we do have, by 2025, do you think we'll have broken that ceiling? Because now this seems to be a mirage of sorts, that as far as we are trying to reach it, it seems to elude us as well. Let's begin with you, Dorcas.
Thank you, Debarl. First of all, a dilemma in what sense? In the sense of the word, a dilemma means that we are making a choice between two difficult alternatives. What is difficult in choosing a woman versus a man?
Yes.
If it's matters of opportunity. What is difficult in, rewarding a woman versus a man equally based on what they are doing? I do not consider this a dilemma. I think it is a deliberate, selected option that the society has taken over the years that we need to break down. Mm-hmm. Is it a mirage? I don't believe it is a mirage. I think Kenya as a country has made a lot of progress towards making this possible in, giving opportunities to women. I mean, in any case, if we see the number of women in boards today, I think having risen to 21% from 14% in 2012, mm-hmm. that in itself shows progress in this country.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's hear from Nyambura.
I agree with her that we've made a lot of progress and that that glass ceiling is not a mirage. I agree mm-hmm. on that. And I think the evidence is right before us. I mean, the women who are on this table mm-hmm. are self-assured, able women who are not shy to voice their opinions or their views, who have come through our system, and who hopefully are having a big impact in even mentoring other women. They are our role models. Mm-hmm. So there is a sense in which the fact that we are increasing our numbers in the platform of being models, we should encourage the younger women to come up and not feel shy. I think there is, of course, a big task in breaking down the stereotypes that are actually the biggest bar, in my view, to women rising up. And that is stereotyped by women themselves, and our men and our society. Yeah, so I think, yeah, in that regard, I agree with my friend here, Dorcas.
All right. Okay, let's hear from also Mary Muthoni.
Thank you, Debarl, and I couldn't agree more with Dorcas that we have come from far, from the time of Beijing and where we are now. Really, we have made strides. But what we want to keep pressing is the numbers to improve, the percentages to go up. And I'm in love with the International Women's Day next year theme of pressing for progress. I think that is what we need to be very keen about. We've seen even in the general elections, we've moved from 16 elected females to around 26, 23, you see? So it's progress. So let's not just water down everything. And the glass ceiling, there are many women who have done that. But we also need many more numbers going up and breaking that glass ceiling.
All right. Hey, for the longest time, we've been talking about this glass ceiling, all right, and breaking the glass ceiling. And I'm eagerly waiting to hear, since my formative days as a young man, all right, to hear glass ceiling being broken. When will it be broken, Catherine?
It must be so hard.
I think I can.
Let's hear from Catherine. They will come to you. Yes,
Okay.
Catherine.
Thank you, Debarl. You know what? I'm going to be controversial and say there's no glass ceiling.
There's no glass ceiling.
There isn't a glass ceiling. The
already
glass
shattered.
ceiling is in people's minds. And if it was there, it was shattered those many years ago. And I would go back to the days of Rosa Parks. Those days.
Yes.
So it's no longer there. It is in our minds. We have seen what women have done over the years. We have seen what they have achieved. And sometimes when we put limitations in our minds, that's when we don't go for the targets. So in my view, and given the statistics over the years, the strides that we have made, particularly given that we in Africa are actually doing much better than a lot of other countries out there, I would say that there's no glass ceiling.
There's no glass ceiling. Right. All right, let's hear from Winnie. There's no glass ceiling? You think so?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I think the glass ceiling has been put there because sometimes women are in a very male-dominated industry where predominantly this has been a male industry, this has been male leadership, this has been male, whatever it is. So when you see a woman for the first time, you're in shock. So that is when you say, oh, she broke the ceiling. But there was no glass ceiling to begin with. Yeah.
And for you, actually, in your industry, because you are in the technology industry, which is heavily male-dominated, right? What are sort of the challenges that you face? Because people, they tend to think, you know, we should have gone for maybe softer subjects, not really the physics and the chemistry that is really, you know, the right up the alley of men. Yeah, you define that,
say
yes?
that because in 2017, we had a briefing with all the contractors,
Yes.
and I was the only female. And I remember one guy saying, "Ai, isi kazi ya wanawake," in 2017. This is a few months ago. So there is still that, there's that notion that women cannot do certain jobs, that they cannot be in certain industries. And I think that should be addressed more than focusing on when the ceiling is going to get broken, who is going to break the ceiling. How about just, you can do it, it has been done, I'm doing it, join me. Because right now, I don't have a mentor in my industry. Yeah, it's...
You don't have a mentor?
No,
Is it because you're looking for a woman mentor?
Yes, yes I am.
Okay.
Yes, I am.
And there's
Why
none
not?
at all?
I haven't found one yet.
So when you talk about the industry, is it just in Kenya or world globally?
Globally.
Globally?
Globally.
Okay. Maybe for the interest of our viewers then, they would really love to know what is this that you do that maybe there's no other mentor in the world for you.
No, I didn't say that. I didn't say that.
Yes.
I mean, telecom infrastructure,
Yes.
which is heavily civil works. It is commissioning and decommissioning towers, which is looked at as kazi ya wanaume. You know, it's kazi ya mkono. You deal with casuals on a daily basis. It's trenching, it is laying fiber, it is backfilling. So you're dealing with 95% of male casuals. and male supervisors. So when you go to the field and you're a woman, there's a shock on the face, like, wait, what? Oh, the boss is a woman. Yeah, so I'm still dealing with that right now.
Okay, let's hear from Banu. Good morning.
Good morning.
Right. Yeah, what would be also your take on this?
Well, Debarl, first of all, good morning and thank you for inviting us. I think what I want to start with is that I'm really happy that we are having this conversation today.
Yes.
There has been, in the past couple of years, there's been a lot of emphasis on women's leadership, but from the political perspective. There hasn't been a lot of discussion around women's leadership, particularly in the corporate sector, corporate world.
Yes.
And so this discussion is very timely and very important. Now, all the speakers before me have talked about the glass ceiling, and I kind of tend to agree that there is this glass ceiling. Going back just a couple of years back, Hillary Clinton, when she was defeated in her presidential race against Trump, she said, immediately in her speech, she said, "We still have not shattered that highest and hardest glass ceiling." So there is something up there that we haven't quite penetrated as yet.
And you don't want to call it a glass?
Oh well,
There's
so the
something.
lack of there is a ceiling. It could be glass, it could be something, it could be a concrete ceiling, for all we know. but the bottom line is that all the speakers have said we are making progress. Well, that's the good news. But in my own opinion, this progress is painfully slow. Painfully slow. It is. I mean, and there is a study that some years ago again that said we will take 100 years if we continue at this pace to reach gender parity or gender equality. If 100 years, now do we want to wait that long? No, of course not. So we need to do something really drastic. We really must. It should not be business as usual, Debarl. Going back to studies like the very recent one I can quote, done by McKinsey in 2016.
Yes.
They found that, looking at the global picture and the situation in Africa, Africa is doing better. And then if you read deeper, Africa is doing better, 5%.
Yeah, we will look at that.
Yeah.
We will look at that. And interesting that you've mentioned that particular report is what I was going through yesterday. And it says that this actually is dubbed the Women Matter, that is done by the McKinsey. That organizations with greater share of women on the boards, it says, tends to have higher operating margins, return on equity, and total return to shareholders. Why is that? Let's begin with Dorcas.
Thank you, Debarl. First of all, the diversity of thoughts that come into discussions, even in that board. In fact, I've had the opportunity to be a student where we are taught on how to be future leaders, female future leaders program. And one of the challenges of boards that are not diverse is that the thinking is homo or mono, if you like, and therefore if it's male dominated, that is how they think. I want to give you an example of like consumables, okay? You have a board of a company that deals with consumables, let's say it's washing powder. Who uses washing powder? It's women. Who is making decisions about that powder? It's men. That's why they go from Omo with Powerform, Omo Plus, Omo with what, because we were never asking the users of that detergent so that they can tell you, look, this is how it should be because this is how we need to do the washing. This is very harsh in our hands. But where do you get the feedback about like that detergent on the streets? Oh, how do you find this powder? How do you find this powder? And then you go back to the boardroom to make a decision of whether you should actually use it or not. If you heard that diversity within yourself, within your board, and I'm just using a detergent as the basic thing I want to reference, then that diversity of thought would have already made improvement and would have already gone ahead, come up with a detergent that is acceptable to the consumers who are the women, and gone ahead. And that's how margins go up, because you're producing a product that is used by a certain group of people that are going to consume it and give feedback that is positive. But there is one who is a user who is within your own board in the decision making. I think that is where the challenge begins. The decisions are being made from largely things consumed by a certain group that is marginalized somewhere, that is not on that table to make the decisions. That's why the diversity of thought in those boards, in those corporations, they are realizing higher margins because diversity in thought, creativity in thought, women are more empathetic, women are more direct even when you go to boardrooms, and we are able to give direct feedback on such matters.
So also the cognitive processes come to really to bear when it comes to this, of course, board meetings as well, because they say that men tend to be more normative than women. Women, they have that collective, you know, holistic approach where you also involve the emotional intelligence. You're not really a maverick when you're making decisions that it's a one man, you know, running the show. But also it is collective. You actually, or you tend to also interact, you tend to consult, other than what we are hearing about men. Let's say from Nyambura, is that the case? And of course, you sitting in the board, do you think that that is the case?
Well, I'll tell you something, and thank you again. The KWFT board, which I chair, is all women.
It's all women.
It's all women.
Oh,
so yeah, KWFT is now positioned as one of, in fact, the market leader in microfinance. Now we do have board executives who are men, and our managing director is a man, although he really does call himself a woman because you know, he's really fighting for women issues, and he's, you know, very astute. But in our board, I've appreciated that women are forthright. They don't hold back. But perhaps this is also because we're dealing with women issues and empowering the women. So there's a lot of passion in this board. I see a lot of interaction on the question of how can we better the woman. And remember again that we are dealing with the rural woman. KWFT Bank, it has now transformed into a bank, is involved in empowering the woman in the grassroots. I'm sure wherever you go in this country, you will see a sign, KWFT. We are really the grassroots. We are the bottom of the pyramid. And our mission is to lift that woman, and not to lift her on our own, but to lift the man as well, and her children.
Yes.
And you know, this is one of the stereotypes that we are now breaking, because women carry a big burden when they want to scale up, because they're carrying their husbands, his views, his socialization, they're carrying their child. No woman wants to go ahead and leave her family behind. So I think if you ask me about what I have seen in the board that I chair, I've seen a lot of excitement about the impact that we are having, and how we have seen over the years a woman transformed, become confident. She moves from a mud thatched house, and she has the capacity to build a stone house. She's excited. So I think there are different levels of this glass ceiling. And when I was thinking about this topic, I was thinking, this glass ceiling, I hope we're not going to put it at Clinton's level. You see, you know, or just people who are governing. Because there are women on the ground who are governing little governments of homes. And how are we dealing with those? And so yes, KWFT is all women, but there's a lot of passion and forthrightness. And I think women also, when you look at the banking industry, you see now that there's a trend, you see that women are the banking managers. Why? There's also, I think, a thing about honesty, about stability, about owning that job in a very sustainable way, and not having a big ego wanting to have the big car, just wanting to go home to your family, doing a good job, and believing in what you're doing. So women are bringing in nurturing, emotional intelligence, and all these things. And empathy. And this helps a lot.
All right. Cognitive processes, given the case of the KWFT, where we have all women boards, will there be something missing if we lack men with their normative approach to the cognitive process?
No, let me correct that. We do have executive. I mean, we do have men on the board.
Yes.
The executive, probably from management, and yes, they too are also contributing well. But you know, they have this force of women who interact with them. And they're there. So I'm not saying we are all female in the sense that we don't have men. We do. Yeah, we do. We have a few.
Yeah, but just given maybe that scenario, how will that be then if you have a woman that is full?
For women to rise up, if I may add on this one quickly, for women to rise up, we have to be our own champions of that. We are more empathetic of our own selves, since somebody else doesn't think that we should. And by reference, I'm saying male don't seem to understand us properly. And so women in Kenya, KWFT, are all women championing issues of women at grassroots level. And I think that's why they're being successful.
Right, let's hear from Catherine.
Debarl, I have a contrary view.
Yes.
I am of the view, and you will see that in all the codes of corporate governance, that diverse boards make the best decisions.
Absolutely.
So we as women have certain skills which men don't have, and men have certain skills that we don't have. And therefore, for you to have a board that is going places and is engaged and is delivering on all aspects, I have no doubt in my mind that it must be diverse in all aspects, not just gender, in all aspects.
Yes.
You've got to talk about age, you've got to talk about gender, regional balance, experience and inexperience as well, you know, innovation and guys who are not so innovative. You need that diverse board. So I'm sorry, but for me, it's a diverse board. We have certain skills, men have certain skills, and we've got to put both of them in that pot and get great results.
Right, let's say from Mary, diverse board, and of course also recently the Kenya Institute of Management did a research as well on diversity and inclusion, and they realized also missing from that component is the aspect of millennials, as in so many boards they're not really including the millennials in their board. Why? We can see also the age bracket of the some of if you're to qualify to be a board member comes from 50 and above, or 46 actually, 46 and above. So why are we deliberately also leaving out the millennials? We'll hear from you as well. But let's pick the brains of Madam Muthoni.
I think, Debarl, a productive board is in its dynamism. It's in the concoction that is in there. And I'll give a case of what happened when I got into the board as the first elected woman in the institution since 1965. First, it was a shocker, and they didn't know how to deal with me. I mean, you're the only lady. Your allegiance is to the people who elected you and not us who are seated here. So sometimes you'll find the boy club, you know, they are seated and they, in an informal manner, and they'll discuss something, and then they'll say, we'll inform her. And when we get to the table, I'll tell them, you know what, I'm of a different opinion. And they're like, I thought you're my friend. You know, like it's that easy to convince you to get to the other side, until they realized that when we nominated some two other ladies, it becomes firmed up that whatever view I have and another lady affirms it, and another one affirms it, it becomes a minute. But when you're alone, it is very difficult. For the board I sit in, we are 9 elected leaders. So 8 male and 1 female. Sometimes it's very difficult to just convince the minds of all those men that, you know, this is the way. But when we are at least 4 of us, 3 or 4 of us, it's enough to pull a crowd. And I think that is what we are keeping on emphasizing, the numbers. If we improve on the numbers, then the dynamism in the boards is really going to be firm, and the production of even those boards is going to be perfect. Yeah.
All right. Let's say from Winnie.
Wow, diversity. I'll go back to the millennials. They are just a breed of their own. They have a mind of their own. I have relatives who are millennials, and their way of thinking is very futuristic. For me, I think including them, including them in a board, maybe not, but including them in just picking their brains on how they're thinking and what they're thinking, I think should be the focus, as opposed to bringing them on the board. Yeah.
Right. All right. Let's hear from Banu as well.
Yeah, thanks, Debarl. I think what I want to say is that in this changing world of the workplace, any company that has 100% board made up of any one gender should really be terrified. Really be terrified, because what we are talking about is that we need a really good mixture in boards. We need a range of perspectives. We need a range of thoughts. We need diversity in, as Catherine has already said, in different elements, and that includes diversity of ethnicity, diversity of age, diversity of profession, diversity of background. You know, all these diversities. It's not just gender, and gender is definitely one of the key ones. But then again, you know, what I have seen and noticed, you know, in my own quest to be on a board, is that whenever the advertisements come out, there is a strong emphasis on people from the finance background or the law background.
Yes.
And that's really unfortunate because and Catherine is smiling because this, you know, why do we have to box boards into that line of profession?
Yeah.
There are teachers who could add value. There are development people who could add value. There are other kinds of professions. Why is there this heavy emphasis on particular professions? And then I also want to add, Debarl, that, you know, the studies, again, I come from a research background, so I tend to do a lot of reading. And the studies are showing very clearly that there is a financial and a non-financial benefit when you have diversity on boards. When you have more than 3 women on a board, then the research shows that, you know, the companies make higher profits.
Yes.
Their return on investment is higher. Their decisions are better. So when we know all this and the business case is very strong, I think now we need to shift our focus to really then how do we make this happen? The business case has been made.
Yes.
The why is sorted. The how really is where we are really stuck. How do we then translate to get the numbers that we are still missing?
The how.
The how.
All right.
How do you make it happen? How do you get more women there? And not only getting them there, by the way, Debarl,
Yes.
once they are in there, how do you make them stay in there? Okay?
Good question.
Because it's not a joyride when you're up there.
Yes, and we're discussing women in leadership, and we're trying to debunk this particular myth about the glass or the glass ceiling effect. And we're asking you this morning, do you think the glass ceiling effect is a myth or truth? Glass ceiling effect, myth or truth? Hit us on Twitter. AM Live NTV is a Twitter handle. AM Live NTV is a profile name on Facebook, and 20505 is our SMS portal. So before we took a short break, of course, we had promised our viewers will look at the why, right? And we're circling back with that particular question. So we have all these policies, we have all these directives, we have all these, you know, good reports and research, but just they remain domicile on paper. The why question is what we want to do. Let's begin with you, Catherine. Thinking about also the gender quota. Norway is a good country and a good example to pick. Of course, we have the 40% gender quota that they've put, that every company has to give a 40%, you know, space for women to be on board in that country. It has worked for that country, but it has also worked against that particular country as well. What do we think, or what should come up to our minds when we come up with quotas like, yes, 40% gender quota we have in the country, 2/3 gender rule in the constitution? Is it good, is it bad?
So Debarl, quotas are there to correct historical imbalances. And for a short time, quotas are okay, because then you need to bring everybody to the same level, and then you can start afresh from there.
Yes.
So for a short time, I am all for quotas. But even as we put in place quotas, we must not compromise quality. Yeah. So we are saying we need 40% of women, we need 30% of women or men. It may be men.
Yes.
But what type of men or what type of women are you bringing on board? It must be quality. It must be the skill that you want.
Yes.
And just discussing a bit about that, any board must be aligned, the composition of the board must be aligned to its strategy. How do you achieve that? You must have in place a diversity policy that speaks to the skills matrix. And that skills matrix and diversity policy should basically be looking at the board and the strategic plan and saying, for us to achieve our mandate, for us to achieve our strategy, who do we need on the board? Do we need one lawyer? Do we need one accountant? Do we need a HR professional? Do we need a millennial? Do we need the older experienced man on the board? Yeah. So implementing that gender diversity policy is very, very critical for any organization to achieve its mandate. So whether that diversity policy has as an element of its component a quota for some time, I am good with it. Yeah. But until we achieve that level of a level playing field, quotas are necessary.
Quotas are necessary. Nyambura, you think so? Quotas are necessary?
Yes, I agree. I agree with Catherine, that to begin with, they're necessary. But we must have a caution that we must also bring in skill. We must also bring in confidence and value. And in discussions about gender and when women talk about men, from my experience, I think men respect performance. They do. I've worked in banks when I was a bit younger. I was the company secretary of a bank.
Yes.
And I think men respect a woman who is adding value, who stands her ground, not with emotions, but with skill.
Yes.
They're afraid of a woman who is showing too much emotion and perhaps dwelling on that. So I think women will be welcome. And we have now an array of experienced women. If you look at the boards, people are now being invited on merit. So as we talk about quotas, even in politics, I mean, there's been a very big debate about women, in politics. But you see now women are coming forth. We have 3 governors now. We have the numbers increasing, but these are women who have not been supported necessarily, except with the knowledge to discover what they have in themselves. Yeah. And when they come out, they have received the respect of the populace, and they're elected. It's true of other corporates. Now, I do know that there are barriers in corporates. Yes. The old boy network. There are things that hold women back in male-dominated areas. But honestly, when women are skilled and confident, self-assured, I think men appreciate them, their contribution. I don't know whether these women agree with me.
Oh, maybe we can pick up also. Dorcas, you hold with that view as well?
I would like to hold the view that without showing too much emotion, but emotion should be there. I've been in a board where I face 8 men all the time, and at a point in time, there was a discussion and I had to say, unfortunately, I have dissented on that. Please minute that. I could see the shock on each of the men's faces because they couldn't believe that I'm saying I've dissented, and I did not change my emotion and I kept quiet. And when they insisted on a certain way, I said, just minute that. I have said I've dissented. I don't agree because I've made my case. You are all of you men looking at me and kind of, intimidating looks. And by the way, they come through those intimidating. I'm like, I still dissent. So I agree, not too much emotion, but we are feminine and we should come with our own, our, what can I say, our chemistry, how we constituted as female. So we will have the emotion, there's a way we'll put across things, but not so much. As long as you're not shedding tears left, right, and center, nobody will take care of you of that. In fact, if you look at the diversity study by Kim of 2017, 54% of women in boards are more educated than the men. Too bad. That is a research that is proven.
Yeah, we'll look into that.
I know that, so I want to answer to this one, that skill, yes, qualification, yes, that already exists. That's not the reason women are not being represented in boards or corporations in senior positions or being chairs of the board as much as men are. So matters of education and skills, I think that shouldn't be a discussion. If you go to classes every evening or weekends, the percentage that is higher is women in those classes. Women, we are seeking to enhance our skills all the time. So I don't think skills is an issue or qualification is an issue to bar women to those roles.
Okay. Let's hear from Muthoni.
Thank you, Debarl. And to say the least, everything goes back to policy. And I think that's the discussion we had behind the scenes. And when we talk about policies, if policies were drafted in 1980, are they still going to be for me in the new millennia? You see, let's start from there. What is on the paper? Is it working for us or not? If it's not working for us, then we need to go back and redraft the same so that it can fit in the dynamism of the world. Everything is changing. So why do you have to keep that to what was drafted in 1970s? And as we say, we need young people in the board, we need new minds in the board, we need to consider a lot of factors. And to factor in all that, then we must go back and review and see whether the policies are for us. Number 2, the challenges that the women are facing. What is inhibiting them from getting to that level? Then there is need for more sensitization. The government has to come into play in this. Sensitize the women on what is their right, and how far they can go, so that we can remove this issue of the glass ceiling and no concrete ceiling. You see, most of the women in this country have actually broken even those concrete ceilings, but nobody even notices that. At the end of the day, nobody comes and tells you, hey, you've done well. You see, you need to move to the next level. So you get stuck at one area because of lack of information on where to go. I chair the women in business at the chamber as well, and most of the questions the women ask me is, how can I get to a boat? You see, they do not have the information that you can also apply to government boards. You see, this is the information that needs to be cascaded to the bottom of the pyramid.
Yes.
Because really, boards are not just at the national level. We also have the county level, where more and more women must be put in for participation. Yeah.
All right.
Debarl, I want to just make a comment.
Yes, please.
Because KWFT has a policy of bringing women into management so that we have 50% or even a higher percentage. This is a stated policy that we work towards. But we find that often when women just get to the management level, we grow them, they hold back. So I think women themselves need to check inside. And sometimes I think it's because women are carrying what we've said. They're carrying their families, they're carrying their husband's views, they're carrying other issues. But in KWFT, we have this policy stated, we have the right policy to bring women more than 50% into management. And when we get there, you see a lot of women shying away. I want to say that, I'm very proud of our MD because he has now started working with these women and saying, why are you not taking this position? What can we do for you? Going the extra mile. Now, if you say that's the quota or what you're talking about, encouraging women and looking behind the scene, behind the veil and saying, you've done well, you've been with us for 10 years, you're now ready to take this position. Why are you declining it? Or because I don't want to be transferred. Or because I don't want to be working late. These are issues that people in management and people who are leading boards need to talk, not just boards, but also management, need to address.
Thank you. Just a moment. Let's hear from Winnie as well. Because Winnie, also you come from a very technical background. And we're talking about these quotas. Do you think maybe it should be a deliberate attempt as well from the technical sector to make sure that if we put this particular quota, also more women, maybe it might be appealing for them to really come up to also the technical infrastructure, the telecom sector, where we can see it could be a problem of a skill set. That when you come to the industry and the market, there are no people who actually, as you say, you're lacking also a mentor right now. Girls are remaining gun shy to actually take up these particular positions. If we come up with a quota, will it work for you? Will it work against you? Because maybe they say this is a male-dominated field, so what point should what is the need and the point for me actually applying for this particular course to go and learn telecommunications, and yet it's a male-dominated field?
I'll agree with I'll agree with Nyambura. It goes back to what the woman is carrying.
Yes.
Is it her family? Because some of these, some of the contracts that maybe I get will require me to be away from my family. I will be mashinani. That is where I will be. And if you're a family woman,
yes,
and this is the position you've taken, or this is your job, you'll find sometimes that holds you back because there's a kid at home, your husband is at home. Your husband is at home, your kids are at home, and you will maybe not give it 100% because you're not sure if maybe if you're going to be away, things are also going to balance out. So I think also it's what's behind the veil that has maybe left very few of us standing in the industry.
And you raise a good point because we're going to look at the barriers as well. And I think what you're mentioning is a double work syndrome that they normally talk about. A woman has a role at home, there's another role also maybe in the board. So how do we have a balance? So you have all these frogs that you're trying to juggle. How do you come up with an even keel as well? Let's say from Banu. The quota.
The quota issue.
Yeah, quota issue.
Okay. On my personal opinion,
Yes.
I think there are countries like Catherine has said, France, Germany, Norway, the Nordics that have put this mandatory quotas. 40% must be women, and there are countries who are totally against it. But I think we should be having a slightly different conversations. Quota or no quota, I think we need to go back to the drawing board and really try to look at what are the systemic issues, what is the really underlying barrier, and the underlying barrier here, which we haven't really discussed thoroughly, is the gender, the gendered behaviors and the norms, the expectations of society on women's roles and men's roles, and also we haven't had the conversation. We're talking a lot about what women need to do, to get into boards. Women need to apply more aggressively. Women need to be out there and ask for positions. Women need to do, which is good. But I think we need to look at the other side of the coin, and the other side of the coin is the private sector itself. I think the private sector has not done enough, and certainly not in Kenya. I mean, we are talking about, again, going back to our statistics, we are talking about 5% in Africa, and the global average is 4%. Should we be proud of that? Definitely not. So there's a missing link here, and again, from where I sit, I think that we really need to focus on the pipeline, development of the pipeline, talent. How do we bring more women right from the beginning when they join a company through the different ranks? You start with junior management, you go to mid-management, you go to senior management, then the CEO, and then the board. How do you build this pipeline? What can companies do? Because if you are in this century, 21st centuries, the business culture must change. It cannot be business as usual. The business culture has to change, and it starts from the top, the leadership. What Catherine said, you really have to have a strong voice right from the top, Debarl. The company leadership must believe that bringing diversity, gender diversity on the boards is good for us. It's smart business. It's economic sense. Once they believe that and then start taking deliberate actions, then we will be seeing a change. Right. But if you're focusing just on one side of the coin and expecting miracles, when there has to be a balance. It is a demand and supply function. And we are not putting more emphasis on the demand side. So that is, I'm talking about the company now. So what can the companies do differently to change this scenario?
Fantastic. And of course, there is also this particular, you bite a pic from the McKinsey Women Matter report. They say, this is a public sector official from Gabon. She says that both public services and private sector are a man's world with all types of discrimination towards women, ranging from harassment to the limitation of the prospects of promotion, right? And this is alluding to what you're saying also to the private sector also not really, coming up to par as far as gender parity is concerned. We have also the women or the persons of the year. We'll have that report much later, being the women who were sexually harassed, in the various corporate sectors, in the Hollywood as well. So there's so much barrier that we can actually talk about. But I want us also to wind up on the gender quota, because I think maybe the gender quota really works for women, maybe in the first phase of it. But moving forward, it works against women as well. We have the gender parity rule here in this country that has brought many women to the fore and maybe to the public domain, and which also makes sure that maybe when we're going to the next cycle of a general election, so many people are aware about our women, right? So they can be, they can actually be elected, through the polls and not through affirmative action. This is what has really happened. Now we have like 3 women governors and also senators and women representatives as well. The gender quota can work for women and against women, because we can talk about the golden skirt effect in Norway. Yes, because you have so many women who are coming on board and they just remain to be pawns in the games of chess. Yes, because of these regulation that we have. So we have women, but they don't really add any value to the board itself. So can we just mention just very briefly, and I think Catherine can wind up on the gender quota with the golden skirt effect.
I wanted to say something on the quota.
On the quota, yes. Let's begin with Catherine on the golden skirt effect.
So Debarl, numbers don't always equal influence.
Yes.
Yeah. Period.
Absolutely.
They don't influence at all.
They don't always influence.
Yes.
They don't always equal influence. But on the question of quotas, I like the way our constitution has framed the issue.
Yes.
Because it's 2/3 of the other gender. It doesn't say women. Because who knows, the way there is so much focus on the woman, on the girl child now, a few years from now, we'll be talking about quotas for men. And we're saying that any board, any public body must have both gender. You can't just do with one. So for me, numbers don't always equal influence. It is who are you bringing on the board? Are they skilled enough to add value? It doesn't matter that we have 5 women on the board. Are they adding value? Are they stepping up to the challenge? Are the men also equally stepping up to the challenge? Are they supportive of the women who are on board so that they can add value to the board? So for me, that has to be the issue. And then secondly, the gender question has to be a top priority for the board and a top priority for the CEO. So that we can then build that pipeline that Banu is talking about. We have people in the pipeline who are coming along. And how do we maintain that pipeline so that we make sure it doesn't leak? We make sure that there are adequate policies in place that support women who are mothers, who can come to work without feeling that they are abdicating on their other roles. We have policies that support them and keep them in the workplace. Policies like flexi time, policies like creche, having creches at the workplace, policies like returnship, equal pay. You won't believe it, but there's no equal pay here in Kenya, eh? Equal pay for both men and women.
Equal pay for equal work.
Equal pay for equal work. Yeah, those types of things. And then it should also be a top priority for the board, because boards talk policy. So unless we put the policies in place, we're actually not going to achieve what we're looking to achieve.
Absolutely.
Right, and it's a pity that we don't have legislators on this forum. I tried looking for them to be on this forum as well, or maybe a representation from government. The Mother's Bill that I think is being fronted by Sabina Shege as well, Women Rep of Murang'a County as well. That is really capturing all the facets that you're talking about.
But who are going to debate it?
Yes.
Men.
Who are going to debate it? Yes, men. So men will be debating on the lactating moment or the crash.
That's why we need women on the table. So when such debates are happening, the woman's voice is not
But it's good it's being fronted by a woman.
Yes, that is a good positive, but we are saying that in Parliament does not have the 2/3 to debate it effectively, because what are the chances that it's even going to go through? You understand? That's the point I'm making. We are proud of Sabina for having presented that, but who are going to debate it?
But let's hope that the men who are going to debate it are alive to the issues we are talking about. So that even as they debate it, they know that we have this agenda. We have both men and women in our society, equally qualified. We need both of them to deliver on the economic promises for our country. So once they are alive to those issues, then we hope for the best outcome.
So we are hoping that bill will help them bring the 2/3 of this female gender that is missing in that platform.
And that's why we keep hoping it's not the person who is debating the issue, it is the extent into which they have internalized the issue and have seen the impact that the bill is going to bring to the people of Kenya.
Right, but maybe Nyambura can tell us if KWFT, of course, they've come up with a lactating room and a creche, and you know.
And this, let me say that we really must also think of the approach of bringing the man on board.
Yes.
Because from a very early stage, we socialize our boys, and this is a mother problem. This is a women that I think a problem that mothers have.
Yes.
They socialize the boy as a special child, the child you've been waiting for to give you something. And so, you know, that boy then grows feeling superior to his siblings who are women. It starts very, very early.
And that's why we are saying we have to go back to the roots.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. And we must also focus on getting the man to see our needs, getting him to buy into this discussion, getting us to see that we are not actually taking anything away from him, that we are actually adding value, and that we are coming in, as Obama said, to be the half of the team. There's no need of going for a football match with half the team. That we are actually half the team. That if we work together. And this is where women need to bring in the man. And like I said, in the rural areas, we are working very hard on the mind of the man, because if he frees a woman, she'll fly.
Exactly.
I mean, I work in the rural areas just because my husband has been in politics and because of KWFT. Those women are dynamic. They're dynamic. With the little that they have, they do so much. But if their husband lifts his finger, that's the end of it.
Yeah, they go.
So we must bring the man on board. So that's
Bring the man on board.
That
We
is
must
why
engage,
it's deliberate to have a quota system at nascent stages of trying to balance this. And then, of course, it has to
We
stop.
build
at
up,
a point
it has
in
to
time.
stop. I agree. I totally agree with you. Maybe just to, because there has been a notion that it is easier also to dismiss the still common objection that quotas are anti-meritocratic. That is more true than status. So yeah, it is not be on merit that you actually put on board because there's a quota. So it has to just naturally take effect. I don't know. Is it anti-meritocratic?
No. I mean, and that's why I made the point that even as we have quotas in place, it is who are we bringing on board? And let me tell you, we have men and women who are equally qualified in this country. We have women who are very qualified who can sit on those boards and add value. So it doesn't help a board if they just simply tick the box by bringing somebody who is not qualified on the board. It is, who am I bringing to fill that slot that has been allocated to that particular class? That's the issue.
And Debarl, what we can add on to that is that it's not just only getting women on the board. Huh?
Yeah.
You have to also now ask the second question. Where in that board, where do they sit? Who are the chairpersons of those boards? Is it just still men and all the women are in the other positions? Which committees do the women head? You want to bring value, and women are very capable of adding value, as Catherine has said. But where are they? You don't want to keep them in just positions for the sake of being there. We want them where decisions are made, where they can make the influence. So that is another conversation we should have.
Right. From the McKinsey report, they said that the European Commission is also considering imposing quota across the EU. We have Malaysia, which has imposed 30% quota for new appointments to boards. We have Brazil at 40% target, though only for state-controlled firms. Should we pick also a leaf from these people? And maybe, besides maybe buttressing the two-gender rule, that we have a quota when it comes to state-controlled firms as well?
I support
What do you
the
think?
quota.
Just support? You support it?
Yes, I do. I think because that's going to be a step into breaking these traditional barriers, prototypes. Men have to see women performing on boards to believe in them, because they are socialized to believe that a woman is somebody I take care of, is my sister. They need to see women performing and go home, internalize it, and think, oh, she actually made sense. And that's not going to happen if we want to make a big jump. I think the quotas will help in breaking those barriers. But after that, after we've achieved, I don't know how long it's going to take, but once we've achieved that, I think then there'll be mutual respect across the board.
Surprisingly, Debarl, the public sector, state corporations are doing much better than the private sector, because the government started implementing this policy many years back before even our constitution. They started bringing women onto the boards. But also, just to speak about that, when somebody comes to women on boards and asks me, Catherine, I would like a woman to sit on my board, I say, who are you exactly looking for? What skill are you looking for? Because we're not in the business of supplying women to sit on boards. We're in the business of supplying certain skills that come with this gender to sit on that board. So quality, experience, and the skill has to be prevail.
Has to prevail, right?
Yes, for soft skills.
Yes,
instead of saying I want a woman, we want soft skills. We want emotional intelligence, or do they ask for those kind of skills, or is it always academic qualifications?
But who also says that men don't have emotional intelligence? They also have emotional intelligence.
Yeah, don't you scratch our romantic sides as well? Yeah, you do.
And you know what when I ask them is, give me the profile of the person you're looking for, because I would assume that in your diversity policy, in your skills matrix, you have developed the type of person you're looking for, so that I can look within my data bank and say, we have this lady who has these skills, who covers up for these soft skills, but who also has these hard skills that you also need. Here are 10 names for you to consider.
Right. Okay.
Debarl,
yes.
I want to comment on something in regards to what she's talked about, the skills. I want to say that our constitution stresses more on culture and traditions. And this gives more power to the local, like our counties, maybe our wards. You're told by the government, bring 2 people from that county. This in itself, it strengthens a lot of traditional values in which, in some situations, they may not favor the woman. Because if you come from a culture whereby the woman is not supposed to speak, is only supposed to be seen, then it is a disadvantage. So again, as we look for skills, we also look at some of the inhibitions that are coming right from where we come from, our localities. And if it is in the constitution, then what is the way out?
What is the way out?
Yeah.
But our
what is the way out?
Our constitution says we have a right against discrimination.
And then the whole issue of role models.
By the time you go to
discrimination,
that, we will already have those who are chosen to sit in the boards, and they are already acting. So it will be another circus, you know, bringing issues again on the table. And more so because sometimes the one gender does not know what is their right. They may not even figure out what has happened.
Okay, let's hear from Winnie. One gender do not know their rights. Yeah, from the sector, you think the gender, they do not really know their rights as far as the constitution is concerned. Majority. Okay.
Yes.
Oh, Winnie, clarify.
Because we are talking here in Nairobi.
Right.
Let us go to Taita Taveta, to Kirinyaga, and at the bottom of the pyramid. You'll be shocked. And just to give a case study, and I'm happy the UN Women is here, the 30% procurement rule, which is set aside by the government for women, youth, and persons with disabilities. We are hardly at 20%. So what is the problem?
No, but no. The ministry has been very categorical that the women are not really taking. They are slow. They are taking as far as.
Why are the women not taking?
You cannot raise accusatory fingers to the government. As women have not been taking advantage of this.
It is the way it is being implemented. So if you tell me that 30% of the jobs in this state corporation are for women, youth, and persons with disabilities, but those the 30% you're setting aside is for cleaning, for supply of paper, for. So me, as a professional woman, I'll not even come to the table. Yeah.
All right.
It goes back to us what we are drafting to propose, because I believe, for instance, at the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce, this is one push that we are having, that we want women to go into construction. We want women to be in male-dominated.
I want to hear from Winnie.
So it comes back to us. What are we doing about it?
But we don't tend to agree with those services that maybe are being put out for tenders, you know, cleaning and tissue papers as well. Because we had also a very influential figure related to one of the government officials taking up, when there was a scandal, taking up some of his tenders as well. And people asked, and they argued in court that yes, this is a provision from the Constitution. Yeah, but that is allocated to women. Was she really supplying toilet papers and cleaning services? No, that was not the case.
And so just say 30%.
30%. Okay, thank you.
It's about standards. It's about the standards that we set.
Actually accommodating all women across.
No.
You see, you can't set up a system that is perhaps online, accessed by a few elite, and you say it's for women.
Fantastic.
And also economic capability. Women are beginning to understand, at least the woman I see in the rural areas knows that there is this provision or procurement. Where does she get her money? Where does she get that
The financing.
bank guarantee? Does she need her husband's approval?
Even the payment for the suppliers has become something else.
Yes.
They don't really get paid.
No, but Debarl, we must never forget that this is a very innovative program that the government has come up with.
Absolutely.
It's a very, in fact, Kenya is amongst the few countries that has said 30% and clearly defined who is this 30% for. It is not for SMEs, it is for women, for youth and persons with disability. So there's a very clear definition, disadvantaged groups. Now, it was 2013 that this program was launched, 2013, and now we are in 2017. It's only 5 years. Let's not crucify.
It's the implementation,
yes,
it's
yes,
the implementation
yes,
of it, that we have we have innovative programs.
Yes.
How do we implement it?
But we have to learn. We have to learn from lessons.
Yeah, we can be fashionable in those programs, but we really
have to learn. And I have worked a lot extensively on this. There are problems, again, both on the demand side and on the supply side. And then there is the financial institutions as well. So I think this is a different conversation altogether. We can sit here and talk about this the whole day.
Yes, the whole day.
Let me just finish.
I can see you're very passionate, all of you.
Let me just finish on this, you know.
Yes, please.
Rome was not built in one day. Rome was not built in one day. This is 5 years. We've learned a lot of lessons along the way.
Yes.
And now we are saying, let's look at these lessons and go back to the same policy makers and have a discussion with them and say, look, this is working, this is not working, let's change here. America has a similar program called the SBA. It's taken them years. If they started it in the 1960s, even today we are talking about it, they haven't quite reached where their target. Nobody is crucifying them.
Catherine is crucified.
I just have a problem with implementation, and I agree with what Banu is saying. Let's address the challenges. We have a good policy in place. Let's address the supply challenges as well as the demand challenges and sort them out.
Fantastic.
We must do something about it. We cannot sit pretty and say that the government is not doing something.
Fantastic.
We must also play a role.
All right, that is a good salutary effort from the government that we should not poo-poo the idea about that particular quota or the 30% being placed for the women and the persons with disability as well. So we cannot crucify it and raise accusatory fingers at the first blush. Let's just give it a wiggle room to grow so that we can see how it will pan out.
Thank you.
Right, but I want to also to pick something that was put up on air just earlier. This is an excerpt from the McKinsey report, 2016, Women Matter. And this was training their focus on Africa, where they say in private sector, Africa has more women in executive committee, CEO and board roles than the average worldwide. Then they say, yet women are still underrepresented at every level of the corporate ladder, non-management and middle and senior management, and fall in number the higher they climb. Only 5% of the CEOs are women. Maybe you can just one of you to clarify on this. Why is this happening? We can see as Africa, the continent, we're leading in terms of women representation. So this really flies in the face of what people are talking about, culture and the stereotypes flying around, patriarchal history that we have, women being sidelined as well. So what would be your comment on this? Let's pick the mind of Dorcas on this, just very briefly.
Let me pick the part of why they fall off as the higher they climb.
Yes.
Largely with the ones I've interacted with, and I've got no research to point to, it has to do with lack of family support. If they're married, sometimes is that their spouse is not comfortable with where they're headed. Either it's in their imagination, I do not know, but they strongly believe that if I continue to this particular position, if I even talk of taking it up, something is not going to go right in my family setup. And culturally, some of them have said that if they are seen speaking in a certain way, even their parents pull them aside and say, hey, tone it down, don't speak like that, you're not a man. So again, they pull away, they said, well, if I'm in a board, then I've got to put emphatically my points across. If I go trying to speak nicely like a flower girl, that's not really how it works. So some of these things pulls them back. But if I reference the Sheryl Sandberg, the book Lenin, and she has said women sometimes we exit before we are meant to exit mentally. We are like, those positions are not mine, so let me just forget about it. So again, sometimes it's how mentally we have decided to limit ourselves, and we decide, since I'm a director here of procurement, let it end here. CEO, where I don't really think this is my thing. I see that sometimes our only limitation, but women, we need family support to be able to progress.
Family support, right. Let's go back to the issue of education, because I think that's very key, and we'll also look at the barriers as well. So we're preparing to give our headline thoughts, remaining with, I think, 11 minutes to go. where from the report it says that women are actually one of the largest pools of untapped labor globally. 655 million fewer women are economically active than men, and while they make up over 50% of the world's higher education graduates, only 25% of them occupy management positions. Why is that? Is it the skill sets that we do have? Maybe you do not really apply to the rigors, maybe the courses that really will require your intellectual vigor input. I don't know. Let's listen from Winnie, because she's really broken through that particular telecommunication infrastructure. What do you think about why we have and the case is even right now, if we take a research, we're having more women who are more informed, more educated, more articulate than men. And what is the future then of our leadership in this country? Are more women going to take over the positions of the corporate sectors, also the public sector as well? Because most of them, they're going to school. And how then does it beat the myth of the double work syndrome? Yes, because they have school, they have work, and they have, the family as well. How do they juggle all these frogs all together?
Debarl, unfortunately or fortunately, I think like growing up, there are some courses that women shied away from. If it was electrical engineering or whatever it is, there were some courses that were looked at as that's the boy child course, and this was the girl.
Yes.
Yeah. And right now, for my position, for example, it's almost like a woman has to make a decision between her family and her career. And then it goes back to African traditional society, as my friend was saying just now, that even maybe your parents look at you as, so you're going to start heading, you're now the man in the family, you're now the construction guy, so you're now wearing the pants because of the position that you've decided to take. So they look at it's still not socially acceptable for a woman to take on some roles, and it goes back to the family structure. If your husband is not behind you, chances are you'll get to a point where you'll be like, I'll take a back seat. Maybe I'll employ a CEO to take this. Maybe I'll employ someone to manage this, so that I can now take my traditionally accepted role as a wife and a mother. That happens all the time.
That happens all the time. Thank you very much. And still, I want to hover on that, the double burden syndrome, where they say working women also have to take primary responsibility for domestic duties. These are some of the barriers. And you also mentioned when it comes to the anytime, anywhere model, it makes it also more difficult for women who face a double burden, right? Because if I'm coming, like for you, for instance, you may be erecting masks all over the country. It requires you to travel, isn't it? So that one, we have the anytime, anywhere model does not really apply to you. You want to be near to your family. That is now also another dilemma for you. So we are on these horns of dilemma, on the double burden syndrome of the family, and also the anytime, anywhere model does not really apply to women. So in case of engineering, where you need to travel a lot, or maybe a case in point of consultants, you need to travel a lot, that really also works against you. Let's say from Nyambura, and then we'll come to Winnie.
You know, you're going to get a very, very conservative statement from me. Because I'm a great believer that family is the key to any nation doing well.
Yes.
And that when we discuss these subjects about women doing well, we haven't actually talked about the family, woman doing well in the family. It's like family achievement. There is no ceiling or glass ceiling in achieving a family, a good family, or investing your life in a family. It seems like corporate world is it. And I would say that as we discuss this, we must also put the family there as one of the branches of achievement. That women who invest in family, sacrifice for family, must be applauded as well. And they must be told that what you have chosen is also valuable to this nation. That's not the kind of discussion that I suppose that is encouraged in these forums. But honestly, I believe that investing in family is a great achievement.
Or giving birth and working.
Yes.
So Debarl,
Yes.
I would say, and I can't agree more with Nyambura, for women to achieve, the family has to work. There is no doubt about that. And that's why we are saying that both organizations and women themselves need to have certain policies, practices in place for women to rise. So for organizations, for example, you know that women have this burden, looking after the family, so on and so forth. What policies are you going to put in place for them to be able to achieve their goals at the workplace, but still remain as a fully engaged family member, delivering on their roles?
Yeah.
As a woman, what sort of practices am I going to put in place to make sure that I deliver on my family, but at the same time, I don't sacrifice my career goals? One of the best things that I had from Caroline Mutoko was women need to have 3 husbands. What that means, 3 wives, not 3 husbands, 3 wives. You have somebody supporting you at home, you have somebody supporting you at the office, you have somebody supporting you in your personal life, so that you're able to harness the 3 spheres and move forward. So all these support systems have to be put in place, recognizing that you have a family to look after.
And Debarl, I want to add on to what Catherine is saying, because basically we shouldn't put all our focus on the big companies. The big companies out here, Safaricom, East African Breweries, Deloitte, they're doing some good work in terms of this family life balance. Safaricom is a crash, fully equipped with nannies and even a doctor coming on site. That's very good. Other companies have flexi hour policies, but these are the big guys, and we really must start planting the seed now with our smaller micro and small enterprises, because these companies are going to eventually, hopefully, grow into a different level. They'll grow to the bigger companies that we want them to grow into. But if they don't start thinking about these things right now, what type of an employer do I want to be? What type of policies that do we want to have in place, so that even me as the SME, when I have people working for me, how do I make sure that the family work-life balance is not eroded?
Right.
So it's really important. And I just want to add one more tiny thing, that at UN Women, where I work, we have the women's empowerment principles, and we've been putting a lot of emphasis this past couple of years on working with the private sector, and really bringing them into this dialogue and this discussion to really help them to understand how do we advance gender equality at the workplace, the marketplace, and in the community. What can you as businesses do? And these principles are really like a code of conduct. So, and for me, I think it's not just focusing on the big guys. Let's start with the small, and let's build the pipeline even there, not just on the women's side. Let's, again, demand and supply.
Right, demand and supply. Let's be also preparing our headline thoughts. You put a very important aspect of the family as well. And recent reports, just in June, we had a report also from the East African community that, yes, this was in the Business Daily, that even more of women, actually, they're lagging behind in terms of childbearing within the East African, especially Kenya. Right, because most of them, they're concentrating on their careers. Most of them they're actually concentrating on furthering also their education, getting the masters and the doctorates at the expense of the family. So trying to extrapolate this and have a trajectory to where we are headed, as you're saying, and this is what we're calling the double burden syndrome that we're talking about. Yes, something else working against you. Women also, they've been defeated on how they can actually balance this. Is the family under threat, especially in Kenya? Because yes, we're talking about you being educated, but what will happen after this phase of the population who are aging, are not, bearing children, will take over these jobs? This is what is happening in Germany. This is what is happening in Japan. I mean, in China as well, with the one-child policy.
Yes, but Debarl, I think in Europe they're trying to reverse that by bringing in policies that allows the man and encourages him to be a support. By giving him leave, by allowing him yes, I think we've introduced that in our Kenyan constitution, but very few days. I'm very strong on we must work on the attitude of the man, because that will help the woman. We've said here over and over again that women are held back. That one of the strongest barriers is our deference to our relationships. And it's appropriate, you know. But if that man feels he can stay home and help you with a child, you know, and that you can go for a week, and that his buddies are also doing it, because you see, men are very, you know, if he feels like, oh, so and so is doing it. If we create a new culture where the man is also participating in the family, that will help. And also to see himself as a partner. I think it will help, and I see in Europe that they do that. A lot of the men, if your wife is not working, the man is getting special allowances to stay at home as a husband support, you know. That is an attitude that could also change.
Even in the country also, I think paternity leave also for men is being increased from 2 weeks. I think 2 weeks, they're adding more weeks as well. Proposed. All right.
So the business culture is changing.
Our headline thoughts. Let's begin with you, Dorcas. 30 seconds you've got. Headline thoughts.
Let's start from the grassroots level. Let's start from the children at the lower level when they are born. It can never be boys, will always be boys. Let's say we are all equal, we have equal capabilities, either girl or the boy, you are able to do whatever you want to do. So that when we build the pipeline for the worker of the future, that is where the start will be. So that issues of the board, representation of women should not be an issue in that future we are looking at.
Winnie, your headline thoughts.
For me, it goes back to the African traditional society where it is embedded in the girl child or in the male child that when you grow up, this is acceptable and this is not acceptable. For me, I think we just need to start nurturing our children from a very young age, as she said, that there's no glass ceiling, there's no concrete ceiling. You can be who you want to be. Go for it.
Right.
It doesn't matter if you're male or female.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Right. Mary.
Well, let's create more sensitization. 1/3 gender rule is a must. It must be enforced. Let more women take elective positions for those policies to be enacted, and let the government have more funds for women programs on the ground, because it starts from there.
Right.
And of course, more laws enacted.
More laws enacted.
Yeah, more laws must
but
be.
have we implemented the ones we do have before we enact?
You see, we have the right now we have the national government and we have the county governments. The county governments are also semi-autonomous.
Thank you.
So they can enact laws that are going to deal with that from the grassroots.
Thank you.
Thank you, Debarl. Both men and women are capable, but we need both for this economy to move forward. As a society, as a country, we've got to find means and ways of making sure that the leaking pipeline for women is plugged, the holes are plugged, so that we don't lose the women who are really, really going to add value to this economy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nyambura.
I think let organizations from the grassroots to the top begin to implement programs that encourage this pipeline, encouraging women and men, and let the government encourage SMEs or even corporates. Let us encourage them to be looking at the issue of women and how we can facilitate them. And again, this adds on to the issue of changing the attitude of the man as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you very much, Banu.
I think it all starts with recognizing the problem, and I think to a large extent we have kind of recognized that there is a problem. But beyond that, I think diversity and inclusion in this 21st century is no longer a nice thing to have. It is an essential thing to have. And many companies are realizing that for bottom line to grow, there is no other way.
Right.